through Select Committee. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Excellent speech.
Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to take a call on behalf of New Zealand First and to give the members on the other side of the House of the National Party perhaps a small history lesson. And I hope they've got their pens ready, and I hope they're ready to take notes. And so when they go back to their national caucus next week, they can perhaps recite some of these quotes. The first quote I have is from the Local Government Conference 2012, 16th of July, and it was the Right Honourable John Key, Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said, and I quote, "The relationship between central and local government is incredibly important. There are many areas where we work together productively. You are also responsible for administering many of the laws we write, such as the Resource Management Act." He then went on to say, New Zealand's 78 councils make up 4% of GDP, spending $7.5 billion of public money each year. So we know where Maurice Williamson got his speech from. And they manage $100 billion worth of assets. He then said they also perform a huge range of regulatory functions that affect households and businesses, from granting resource consents and building consents to issuing dog registrations. Councils have a role to play in creating an environment that is conducive to sustained economic growth, just as central government does. So that was this year. Then we jump back 1 year to the 11th of July 2011. The same Right Honourable John Key, Prime Minister of New Zealand, former money trader of Merrill Lynch from New York, but now Prime Minister of New Zealand, 11th of July, where he said to the Local Government Conference in 2011, "Local government already makes a valuable contribution to our economy. You contribute 4% to New Zealand's GDP, you have infrastructural assets of $89 billion, and you employ more than 22,800 people. And listen to this, Honourable Nick Smith, our joint commitment to economic growth is crucial for New Zealand's success. Together, we are an enabling force for the private sector to generate jobs and economic growth. New Zealand needs a more competitive economy to grow." So there was the deal, the partnership between central and local government. So that's 2 years in a row. Let's go back a year further. 26th of July 2010, the same Right Honourable John Key, Prime Minister of New Zealand, former Merrill Lynch trader from New York, he said then, "You in local government can also contribute significantly to economic growth. As we look to improve infrastructure and go for growth, we're conscious of the role that local government also has to play. I know that the actions," this is what he said, "I know that the actions of central government have a direct impact on local government. Sometimes that can mean increased costs, as we've seen in the past." So there, 2010, admitting that local government is taking on increased costs from central government. So we go back a year earlier to 2009, 27th of July 2009, Local Government Conference, same person, same John Key, same money trader from New York. He said, "We appreciate the challenges you face. Both central and local government need to keep improving the services we provide to our constituents at a cost that is affordable. I'd like to thank local government in New Zealand for the constructive work you're putting into this review. I am confident with your help we can make some real progress. Infrastructure is another area where we can achieve a lot together. Boosting infrastructure investment is a priority for this government." That's what he said. Boosting infrastructure investment is a priority for this government. He says, "Meanwhile," he says, "councils expect to spend somewhere around $30 billion over the next decade on roads, water services and other assets. By working together, we can maximise the return our communities get from these investments." And then he went on to say, "The government knows that councils face..." Hang on, listen to this, this is a good one. He went on to say, the government knows that councils face a big spike in costs over the next decade in infrastructure investment, and some of this will quite rightly be financed by debt." Oh, whoa, isn't that incredible? So in 2009, the Right Honourable John Key says, My goodness, some of this joint thing between central and local government is going to have to be financed by debt. But what did we hear from the Honourable Nick Smith just a short while ago? Criticising them from going from 2 to 8 billion. Boy, I think you need to go and speak to your Prime Minister, your leader, and say, excuse me, leader, but I went down and actually sort of stabbed you in the back a bit by criticising your comments from these conferences because I said the debt is back. Anyway, let's go back a year earlier to 2008, 26th of July 2008, when he wasn't the Right Honourable John Key then. He was just John Key, Leader of the Opposition, former Merrill Lynch trader from New York. Okay, so he's pretty fresh off the block then. Leader of the Opposition, trying to become the Prime Minister. He says, and I quote, "In particular, central and local government face the challenge of investing in infrastructure to secure New Zealand's long-term sustainable growth. We have to get this right, because if we want to enjoy living in a first world economy, we need to have first world infrastructure. Right now we have a serious backlog in infrastructure investment." Are you listening to this, Dr. Smith? He said, right now we have a serious backlog in infrastructure investment. Much of our infrastructure needs upgrading or replacing. Some is at the end of its expected lifespan. Low quality infrastructure has become a bottleneck to a growing economy. Local authorities have identified in their long-term council community plans a required investment of around $30 billion over the next 10 years. Most of this, this is John Key, Leader of the Opposition at the time, wanting to become Prime Minister, most of this goes to pay for roading and the so-called three waters, drinking water, wastewater and stormwater. Central government is also facing an infrastructure spend of about the same magnitude over the next decade. This makes infrastructure a $60 billion issue, and we have to have the right approach to dealing with it. It's my view that central government has much to learn from local government when it comes to infrastructure planning, investment and management. So isn't that interesting? Over 5 consecutive years, you've got a Prime Minister and then the Leader of the Opposition absolutely begging local government to respond to help economic growth, to grow jobs, to grow opportunities in the country, to improve our standing, to bring us back into first world status. And they do, and they respond, and they try and leverage their lazy balance sheets, as they were called, and they respond. And what happens? This national government just kicks them in the teeth and puts them down. And the former local government minister, Nick Smith, who's going to be the future local government minister as soon as Dr. Lockwood Smith goes off to London and David Carter, the current minister, goes and takes up the chair with the sheepskin up there, then Nick Smith will be back, I think, and he will have his hand so far up the back of Lawrence Jewell and all the other mayors of New Zealand and all the councils. He'll be so far in there, he'll be in there, you know, doggy deep into local government, and he'll be telling them, and he'll be putting in his Crown managers and his Crown spies and his Crown advisors and you name it, and half of them will be from Federated Farmers, because it was really only Federated Farmers and Business New Zealand that came along and supported it. Of the 775 submissions that came along, only Chamber of Commerce, Federated Farmers and Business New Zealand and a few other National Party shonkies came along to support it. The vast majority opposed it. So what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is this is going to go through, this bill. It's going to go through, but rest assured, the communities of New Zealand need to be aware that they're not going to be hung out to dry. And the minute the Honourable Nick Smith becomes the local government minister, we're going to be watching him like a hawk. And if he tries to interfere and pull the puppet strings of local government, and if he thinks that we're going to an Eastern Bloc regime where the central government basically controls every little local town and authority in New Zealand, then he's got another thing coming. And we will constantly remind him that his leader for more than 5 years set the challenge, local government picked up the challenge, and they will continue doing it. And I can just, in closing, say, well done to all the councils of New Zealand. You're doing a very good job. And if you keep going the way you are going, and of course, we always look for efficiencies and economies wherever we can, and all councils do that, then New Zealand can perhaps get back to a first world country and be a great place to live. But it certainly won't be if we're going to have some sort of a Stalinist central government that's absolutely going to control everything from the office of Nick Smith.
Jamie Lee Ross.
Mr Speaker, that was a speech from the failed former Mayor of North Shore. Mr Speaker, that was a failed mayoralty of Andrew Williams. The good people of North Shore in the last election he stood in